Hello there, and welcome to Weird Music on the Glumburger channel. Welcome to our special Christmas episode of Weird Music. So as you can no doubt see from the title, this is a perfect album for us to be reviewing today, right? So on this channel we have actually been exploring the discography of Low, and with our last video being a dive into Secret Name, one of my favourite Low albums, the next logical thing is to look at the next album, right? Weirdly enough, the album that the band released following Secret Name was this very album we're looking at today. And with the timing lining up so perfectly for me, I figured there'd be no better album to look at for our Christmas season episode. So today I present Christmas by Low. So what is Christmas by Low? Well, Christmas is an EP release of sorts by Low, an 8-track album mixing original songs with some covers of classic Christmas numbers. Released on Kranky on November 16th, 1999, this album was recorded and released as a gift to fans of the band, with the physical release even featuring a note from the band that reads as follows. Despite the commerce involved, we hope you will consider this our gift to you. Best wishes, Mimi, Alan and Zach. Truly sweet, I have to say, and I think there's something very genuine and heartfelt about it. But as well, what a wonderful selection of alternative Christmas music this album is. You've got the classic Low style here, of rather sad, slow and very melancholy music, offset by the sentiment of Christmas vibes that runs throughout the entire album. The music does some truly wonderful things, delving into religious themes here and there, as well as some rather amusing and interesting observations upon the season. A truly special album in my books that I'm really glad to be discussing today, so let's dive in then, shall we? So opening up with Just Like Christmas. This establishes the scene with sleigh bells, a gentle drum pattern and a jangly distorted guitar before Mimi comes in with that beautiful voice, singing this rather interesting musing on Christmas. There's a lovely bounce and drive to the whole song, and it feels rather oddly uplifting in this weird way that only Low seems to do in their music. It's very unusual. But there's just these lovely gentle vibes and just a sense of Christmas that runs throughout the entire thing. The song itself has some lovely moments throughout it though, be it the gentle vocalizations in the background, or the roll on the drums following the end of each and every verse, It just expresses this aesthetic of the snow falling all around on this cold wintry landscape. What's interesting is how the song almost expresses some interesting opinions on snow actually. And what connotates the feeling of Christmas. Apparently as well, the sentiments of the song are based on a true story from the band, going all the way back to their spring 1999 tour in Europe. No doubt comments on the sprawling snowscapes garnered some interesting opinions from the band, right? And thus they, living in cold snowy climates, know that snow doesn't always equal Christmas. But what does equal Christmas is the feelings you hold for one another and the communities you keep with yourselves, and that's what makes Christmas. A truly gorgeous and lovely sentiment at the heart of this song, and it opens it up in a truly glorious and wonderful way. Truly spectacular. And so our next song, Long Way Around the Sea. This one starts off with a very melancholy little acoustic riff from Alan, very slow and sparse, bringing the vibe down to these rather moody introspective levels, before he then starts singing the opening verse, establishing the story of the 3 wise men venturing to find Jesus, with the stanza ending on the single line of "Take the long way around the sea," where he is so beautifully joined by Mimi on the harmony, who sings just so perfectly alongside it. The whole mood here is very somber, very lulling, but the way it just all opens up perfectly with that repeated refrain following each and every verse just makes it a truly gorgeous song to hear. I have to say, there is a rather kind of, melancholy, depressing vibe to this one. But as well, Low do it in such a way that makes it so oddly beautiful at the same time. It's just classic Low, I have to say. The way they just bring out so much emotion in the things they do. And it's perhaps one of my favourite things on this track, as it seems to, actually drag out a lot more of the tragic elements behind the birth of Jesus. The birth of Jesus and the story behind that, which was the fact that King Herod was looking to find Jesus in order to murder him. Hence why the three wise men didn't return to Herod, but instead took the long way around the sea. I just adore how, Low just pulled this rather existential melancholy element out of this story, though, and present it in such a somber and moody way on this track, though. Not like the classic Christmas songs at all, but there's something truly wonderful and impactful about it that makes it such an emotional track. Very slow number, very sparse, but just classic Low doing what they do best. So for our next track, we get our first cover of a Christmas standard, Little Drummer Boy, the Pa-Ra-Pa-Pum-Pum song. So I've got to be honest here, but I actually adore this song, and this very weird version of it as well. The band does their own thing with this entirely, and the song opens up with this very persistent drone that hangs around in place for the entire duration of the song, letting, these very gentle distorted drums start that tempo, pushing it all through the snow essentially. And after a very lengthy and long introduction of this, where you're kind of just sort of stunned by the whole experience, Alan just starts singing the song, singing those words, backed up with gorgeous harmonies for the Ra-Pa-Pum-Pum parts. And I think there's something so charming and delightful about this version, oddly experimental too, with its peculiar textures and choices for instrumentals alongside that drone. Especially with what they do with the drums, it's kind of just caught in these unusual little effects that make it, kind of like a faint hiss of static and noise that's simmering all around, as well as, alongside that drone as well, like you just got those odd little lo-fi layers in there as well. But it seems to work so nicely for what they're doing here, though. It just makes it so fascinating to hear. And it is a classic Christmas song at heart, I have to say, and one that has always been a bit of favourite of mine, though I am very aware of how a lot of people don't like this track, or at least people I know don't seem to like this one at all. I think for me, it was the Bing Crosby and David Bowie version that's always been one of my favourite Christmas songs. Hence why, Little Drummer Boy holds a special place in my heart. And hearing Low, do this oddly traditional and experimental version of the track is just truly delightful. The aesthetics of the song just seem to match perfectly with what Low do with their music, letting them create this gorgeous drone of a track. Definitely weird. Not for everybody, but especially with the persistence of that drone in place, it just kind of helps push this further Christmassy vibe for some reason. Like we're driving home in a car during a snowstorm as Christmas songs blast through the radio. Truly brilliant and one of my favourites off of this album. So our next song, If You Were Born Today. Another original song by Low, and without a doubt one of the saddest and more challenging tracks on this album. So opening up with a glide on the guitar by Alan, he just begins that beautiful vocal style, just very low and patient as we're confronted with this rather harrowing story of how things would be if Jesus wasn't born on Christmas Day, how there'd be a lot that we just simply would not experience. The band kind of explored this by going through a lot of quotes from Jesus, including things like "Blessed are the meek and humble," before throwing in some of their own lines here and there that kind of contextualise it in that sort of low existentialist way. There's a very powerful sentiment to it all, especially the more it all builds up though, because you just got Mimi and Alan singing together with those perfect harmonies, still pushing that beautifully slow tempo the entire time. But as it slowly traverses more and more throughout the song, it builds and builds, and and the vocals become so much more stronger and more powerful, building to a cataclysmic level, before it then just tapers away though, Instead of rising to that tumultuous boiling point, it all just tapers off like Low do so often in their music, leaving room for a gentle reprise of the opening verse to occur once more. But it doesn't end after that though, because you actually have a delightful outro where alongside a lengthy closing instrumental, there is a chorus of bells twinkling in place, really pushing forward that Christmassy vibe once more. And I kind of get from this a kind of sentiment of how without the birth of Jesus, we maybe wouldn't have Christmas as we know it, or at least a lot of people wouldn't have Christmas as they know it in this day and age, right? Never mind the actual origins of the holidays, but it's the fact that from the band's perspective as Mormons who celebrate Christmas with a particular religious approach, celebrating the birth of Jesus, this is why for Low it's important for them to explore this in their song here essentially, and why without the birth of Jesus, Christmas isn't really Christmas perhaps. It is interesting because it's a very depressing and sad song. It's how it's all been presented here, the kind of existential musing on perhaps the origins of Christmas and how without the birth of Jesus there would be nothing. Very strange, with its very melancholy sentiment. It's very challenging in a lot of respects, especially on a Christmas album, right? But it's also Low doing what Low do best, presenting to us very powerful emotions in the form of this very sparse music essentially. Incredibly impactful and without a doubt a highlight of this whole album experience, but not one that is easily listened to, I would say. So our next track is another classic Christmas cover with Low's version of Blue Christmas. So this track dates all the way back to the 1950s and has been covered by many artists including the likes of Elvis Presley, the Beach Boys, Johnny Cash and Bon Jovi. My apologies. Here though, we have a classic Low style of gentle slowcore music though. Opening up with Mimi's vocals, she just commands the stage as she begins the rather lonely, miserable song of being alone on Christmas Day without the one you love. And this song feels like the classic marrying of, traditional Christmas songs, with Low's undeniably brilliant style of music of doing everything very slowly, patiently and sparsely. Especially with how brilliant Mimi performs the song though, she kind of gives almost a classic performance that's drenched in those natural reverberating effects while the instruments slowly push it all along. But there's something kind of oddly delightful about this track though, which just perfectly continues the Christmas vibes, whilst giving us that characteristically sad and miserable emotion that comes through a lot of Low's music, purely as a result of just how they sing and play songs. Like the other versions, of this song certainly play up the tragedy of unrequited love at Christmas, but Low's version, I think they just captured the heartbreak so perfectly here. Truly brilliant and amazing work from Mimi on the lead vocals here. Like, this is quite the performance, I have to say. So, our next track is another classic Christmas cover, Low's version of Silent Night. So we actually reviewed Silent Night last year for the last Christmas special because we had a version of Silent Night by Merzbow to close off the Christmas album. That was a truly fantastic and unhinged version of Silent Night that was nothing like the original song. So here we have a bit more of a classic version though, opting for an acoustic version sung by both Alan and Mimi throughout the entire song. And what you have is just a gorgeous acoustic number that captures the essence of what makes Silent Night such a beloved and revered song. Like, Mimi and Alan's voices just carry the song so beautifully, so slowly and so patiently, presenting the song with no urgency whatsoever, just letting the natural melody of the song itself, just do its magic when you sing it essentially. As a version, it's very classic in a lot of respects, but what I adore is how much it reminds me of my own personal Christmas seasons when I was much younger. Like, as a kid, we would have times when my dad would play Christmas songs on his acoustic guitar, whilst even my mother would sing along to them, including the likes of Silent Night. And something about hearing this particular version, of hearing Alan and Mimi singing this together with just their guitar, it reminds me so much of those warm, fuzzy Christmas day spent with family, essentially, which I think is really nice and special. Like, that fills me up with a lot of warmth, I have to say. There's just something lovely about the fact that Lowe's music reminds me of that, or this particular track does. I think it might be because Lowe actually don't do anything extra or push it down any weird avenues when they perform this one. All they do is just play the song, sing it beautifully, and nothing more. It actually always reminds me of how my own father always revered this song, essentially. And how in particular, he never liked the version that appeared on Damien Rice's album Oh, purely because singer Lisa Hannigan took a lot of liberties with the vocal performance that he felt was largely unnecessary. He always felt the power of this song came from its simplicity and how you don't need to overdo it in any way whatsoever. Which is why I think I adored this particular version though, because it does just that. I'll say here though, the irony is not actually lost on me though, considering Merzbow completely bastardised the song in our last Christmas review, right? But I did think there was a lot of artistic merit there, as he did something very unique and cool with it. Probably one of the few versions where I think, yeah, take the liberties, because he did something very neat with it. Unnecessary, but very cool. But here, Lowe just do it in such a classic way that make this a really special and gorgeous song on this album. Truly brilliant stuff. So our penultimate song, Taking Down the Tree. So this one opens up with a very charming little acoustic riff, a couple of chords before a gentle twinkling of chimes establishes that Christmas vibe once more, letting Alan turn those chords into this very gentle picking pattern, before his vocals come in such an odd way with this effect that it's like it's all being pushed backwards, and caught in radios perhaps. It's very interesting sonically, but it's also a lovely song as well, and what you actually have is a very delightful song with a bit of a sad sentiment behind it, of taking down the Christmas tree now that the Christmas season is over, kind of lamenting the fact that we've all moved on, another this, another that, same as it ever was essentially. And the song builds up to a very nice level though, ending on this expression of just winding up the lights, just all the monotony that actually occurs on Christmas Day, which for me is brilliant because winding up Christmas lights is perhaps one of the most tedious and frustrating parts of taking down Christmas decorations. And I love how they reference it here on this song. But their final thought seems to be a little bit amusing on how they put the star so high up on the tree. It's a very brief little song, but I adore how it kind of actually captures this rather mundane aspect of Christmas that few of us really think about, but a lot of us experience, of course. And the ending of Christmas, of taking down the decorations now that everything is over, it's so oddly charming in how it presents it, in a way that I can't help but feel slightly amused about. I've been there myself. I think most of us has, right? But it's also a lovely demonstration of what Lowe do best though, of just doing things in their own way entirely, of going against the conventions of norms, which in this case is presenting Christmas music that is lovely and charming. Instead, they just do what feels right for them, which is actually, for the most part, presenting rather sad songs. But I adore it that they do that though, and with this, it comes across as one of their most charming little songs actually. There's something so delightful and strange about this one, and I think it's truly brilliant in this very weird way. So after that we get to our final track, One More Gift. So this one kind of ends everything in classic Lowe territory, featuring Mimi's vocals against a slow, sparse guitar line that resonates with very wonderful effects against this lovely bass line. The song expresses this kind of sentiment of having run out of money now that we spent so much on presents for nieces and nephews, with it ending on the statement of there being at least enough for one special gift for a special person. It's kind of sad how they present this one, and very incredibly brief as well though, the sentiment of doing something for a loved one at Christmas despite hardship and difficulties, despite the commercialization of Christmas and having to spend so much on family members. Very sad in a weird little way, especially with how slow and somber this one is, but something a lot of us can relate to as well, and how in spite of all that, you will do what you can for your truly loved ones, of course. And so with that, we have essentially covered Christmas by Lowe. A short half-hour album that just resonates with such powerful emotion and weight across its 8 different tracks. Like, I just adore how Low do their classic style of slowcore music on this album, dressed up with a sprinkle of Christmassy vibes, from lyrical content to the occasional bells and chimes here and there. Like, it results in something that feels so distinctly like Christmas. But it's interesting because for the most part it's rather existential in that odd Low way, of course. Having examined aspects of Christmas that is, it's kind of like, the kind of stuff that a lot of the conventional commercial Christmas music never actually touches upon for the most part. And I think that's part of what I adore about this record. How at the heart of it all is actually what is a very human and real experience of Christmas time. It feels so much more relatable than a lot of what gets played around in this season, I have to say. And as well, it is a truly wonderful album from Low as well, with them doing their wonderful, gorgeous slow music, letting their voices touch your soul with those gorgeous harmonies, those sparse instrumentals. Like, I just can't fault this one. Like, I truly adore listening to this one. It is something as well that I try to listen to each and every year around the season, hence why it's inevitable that we'd eventually review this one, right? But the timing did delight me here, considering that this album does follow on from Secret Name, the last album we looked at from Low. A special gift for fans of Low at Christmas. But as well, I adore it because it's an alternative Christmas album that doesn't actually fully celebrate the season, but rather laments on so many different aspects that all contribute to the season in their own little ways. A truly special and wonderful release from the band that is now a bit of a Christmas tradition for myself. To kind of touch upon that as well, we kind of all have our own traditions at Christmas, right? There's all of these little things and rituals and things we do each and every year, same thing again, and it kind of adds to the comfort of what makes Christmas season. For myself, it's more often than not watching the same Christmas films each and every year, Muppets Christmas Carol, Robbie the Reindeer, or Die Hard. I'll be honest, I know it's not a Christmas movie, but it is a tradition for myself, and therefore it gets reclassified as a Christmas film for myself. It is something I watch every season at Christmas now. Another one kind of in that same vein though, that I always try to watch is Tokyo Godfathers by Satoshi Kon, which isn't exactly a Christmas film per se, but it does contain a lot of sentiment and values from the season. It's just something that I always try to do each and every year, even if it is by myself. And for you watching, you no doubt have your own little traditions that you all always keep as well, which is what truly keeps the essence of Christmas alive. At least true in this modern day, right? Celebrating in a way that makes sense to you personally. Like, that is what makes Christmas. Part of it for me is returning to this wonderful album each and every year. A wonderful gift from Low, and I'm genuinely in awe of how wonderful and charming the whole thing is. And so with that, I think we'll be coming to the end of our Christmas episode of Weird Music there. A continuation of our dive into the discography of Low that perfectly lined up into the Christmas season, right? I'll be honest, it was actually unintentional, but when I realised it, I knew it had to happen. I have to say, it is a bit of an oddity within Low's discography, but the genuine sincerity that is evident upon this release makes it such a perfect little Christmas experience. One that for fans of the band is just perfect for this current season, I have to say. If you listen to it each and every year, of course, if you're one of those kind of fans, maybe you don't, that's up to you. It's not for everybody, of course, but for me, it holds a special place in my heart. So if you made it this far, I would like to thank you for watching today's episode of Weird Music. I'm really glad to have talked about Christmas by Low, of course. As you can see, it's something that is very special to me. So if you've made it this far into the video, then let us know in the comments, what are some of your own personal Christmas traditions that you do each and every year? What makes the season personal to you? With that, I would like to thank you for watching today's episode of Weird Music. I wish you all the best, take care, and bye bye for now. Bye bye.